Gladiator 2 tells the story of Lucius, Maximus's son, who enters the Colosseum as a gladiator after the tyrannical leaders of Rome conquered his home in Numidia. This film was directed by Sir Ridley Scott, and it stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, Joseph Quinn, and Connie Nielsen. So I actually only just watched Gladiator for the very first time a couple of weeks back, and I thought it was nothing short of a masterpiece. I absolutely loved it. So going into Gladiator 2, I had my expectations set right. I wasn't expecting it to be even nearly as good as the original film. I was expecting to like it because I do love Ridley Scott's films, but you can't expect a sequel to one of the greatest films of all time in many people's books to come anywhere near close to the quality of the original. But I was shocked at just how much I loved Gladiator 2. I will be very surprised if it doesn't make it into my top 10 of the year, because this film was absolutely awesome. Is it as good as the original film? No. Is it an amazing film in its own right? Abso-fucking-lutely. And starting off with the positives, I just have to acknowledge how grateful I am that I live in a world where this kind of film still gets made today. This is a big budget film. It's got a big runtime. It's got a bunch of big names in it. It is a classic sword and sandals epic. And it just feels like the kind of theatrical experience that we're slowly starting to lose now. You've got a few big name directors left, like Ridley Scott, and this man is nearly 87. He's going to be 87 in a bit under a week from the time that this video is uploaded. And that just boggles my mind, the fact that this man is still making movies this consistently and this consistently good. And he is one of the remaining few that studios will trust with a big budget and who will put it to good use. And by God, he did, because this is old-fashioned spectacle, big blockbuster entertainment. The whole cast is absolutely phenomenal here, but for me and many others, the standout is easily Denzel Washington. And I have to be perfectly honest here. I've never been the biggest fan of his. But he knocks it out of the park here, or knocks it out of the Colosseum, should I say. Because he's just so funny, intimidating, and confusing all at once. Like, the whole time you're watching this, you don't know whose side he's on, and he's kind of playing all these characters, and you're kind of like wondering what his overall goal is. And it's just so fun to watch his character evolve, and then when you eventually realize his overall goal and ambitions and what he's really attending to achieve, he's just so entertaining to watch. He's so enjoyable. He's got such charisma about him, and I just loved him. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Ridley Scott's wonderful sense of humour is on full display here. It permeates the entire film. I love how he's got this habit. He did it with Napoleon last year, and he's done it even better here, where he basically takes some of the most powerful historical figures and says, yeah, but what if they were a bunch of drunken lunatics? What if they were just complete buffoons, basically? And you can draw parallels to powerful people now, and it's quite funny. It's all very tongue-in-cheek and silly, but it makes you laugh. It's entertaining, it's funny, and it does make you go, oh, what? Maybe they weren't these big stoic figures like the history books portray. But I just love Ridley's sense of humor. I could watch a historical epics with him where he basically turns these powerful people into idiots. I could watch them all day. He is hilarious, and I love how much I laughed during this film. I love how much of a dressing down he gives these people. It's so funny. Joseph Quinn and Fred Hetchinger as the two twin brothers that are the emperors, they are hilarious together. This is where a lot of that kind of Ridley Scott humor comes in, where he's kind of just turns them, as I said, into complete buffoons. They're bickering brothers, they're idiots, they're both power hungry. He's just hilarious. It really makes you wonder what they would have been like in real life, and I just love it. It's like the Weasley twins are running Rome. It's just hilarious, and they do so good in their roles. And the way they evolve throughout the film is nuts, and I loved it. The battle sequences are all amazing. They are over the top, they're bloody, they're gory, they're violent, they are exhilarating, they're silly, but they are so entertaining to watch. They are so much fun to watch, especially the hand-to-hand combat scenes, like when it's just two guys with the swords. Those are definitely the standout times, but even the way that Ridley just goes, fuck it, fill the entire Colosseum with sharks. Let's see what happens. Like, it is so over the top and so silly, or you've got this giant rhino, and he's so good at creating these action sequences, and people calling historical inaccuracy, sure, fine, of course, but I don't really care when it's so entertaining and thrilling to watch. I also really liked Pedro Pascal here. He is really, really solid. He's an interesting character because you kind of see him from the start through this certain lens. And you think of him through the lens that you see him at through the start. But then as you kind of spend more time with him, you realize that there's a lot more than meets the eye with his own motivations and ambitions. And it's a really clever way of evolving his character because you're kind of just watching him through Paul Mescal's perspective. But then the way you slowly learn he goes from like a two-dimensional character and just kind of goes into a bit of a more of a three-dimensional one. It's really clever, and I really liked what they did with him. Now, I've never seen Paul Mescal in anything else, but I thought that he was spectacular here. I'm going to have to search out some more of his work, but I love it when you can see an actor has got real determination to make a role work. Like, he seems to have put on a lot of bulk for this role to be bulkier and intimidating. I always thought of him as a bit of a skinnier guy, but he is big in here, and he does a great job with his physical performance. But he also does a great job at demonstrating his character of Lucius, his single-minded determination of revenge. He's got one goal. He's not going to let anyone or anything slow him down, and that's it. But he also balances that with miraculously and so bizarrely basically being the only voice of reason in the film. As he travels to Rome and ascends through the ranks, and he slowly sees Rome from the inside and all the political chaos, he's like, you're watching it and you're like, wait, he's actually kind of the normal one. Everyone else around him is completely crazy, and this guy who's so emotionally numb and just wants bloody revenge is probably the most relatable one. It's really, really entertaining. He does great here. I just love how his character evolves throughout the film, and it's all credit to his performance. Gladiator 2 also subverted my expectations in such a positive way too. I was initially a little worried that it was just going to be a bit of a copycat of the first film, just a bit of a retread, almost like a soft reboot. But what starts out as a similar sort of revenge story slowly turns into this chaotic political thriller. Once Lucius is accustomed to Rome, once he's been there for a while, once he can see what's going on in the inside of this city, he just starts to see all the corruption, all the plotting, all the scheming, and all the craziness that is just going on. You're just slowly watching a large variety of characters do anything to ascend to the throne. They're all power hungry. They will betray each other. They will do some of the most horrible things to each other. They will flip sides. They will lie to people's faces and pretend that they're on their side, but then just go behind their back and just do a massive switch up. And it just results in absolute chaos. It is so entertaining. It is so different to the first. And I love how it kind of just takes you on this ride that you feel is going to be familiar, and then it just flips you into this, as I said, a chaotic political thriller, and it is so entertaining to watch. And I was like, thank God that it actually did this, because as I said, I was worried that it would be too similar to the first film, but holy shit, this finds its own voice and absolutely merits existing. And lastly, for the positives, this ended up being some of the most fun that I've had at the movies all year. This is just me saying, go out and see this on the biggest screen possible, because this is big blockbuster entertainment that is, quite frankly, difficult to come by. Like, you don't see big name, huge budget films of this size that look their budget that much nowadays, and it was just a delight to watch. Now, while I personally don't have too many problems with this film at all, I do have to acknowledge that there are some things in this film that worked for me, but may not work for other people. In fact, definitely won't work for other people. And the main one of that is that The storytelling approach here is quite uneven and unfocused. As I said, the story has a flip halfway through where it goes from being a revenge thriller to more of a political thriller. And that might give some people whiplash. It is, you could call it unfocused. I personally really loved the ride that it took me on, how it kind of just morphed into something else and something completely different entirely. I really liked that. But other people are going to watch it and probably be turned off by it. Another thing that audiences might be put off by is just how tongue-in-cheek this film is. It's very knowingly silly. If you watched Napoleon last year and thought, that's not for me, chances are this probably isn't going to be for you either. Now, I do think it's quite a bit of a better film than Napoleon, but if you go in expecting the same tone as the first Gladiator, you're not going to get that here. It is very different, and again, audiences might be put off by that. So overall, I had an absolute blast with Gladiator 2. I love this film. It has an infectious sense of humour, it's big, it's violent, it's epic. I couldn't recommend seeing this one in the cinemas enough. I absolutely loved it. Gladiator 2 is worth watching and worth buying. Thank you so much for watching my review of Gladiator 2. Let me know what you thought of this film in the comments, and please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you all later. Bye.